Hey, right, introduction, here we are, my annual rant. Do you know what, I shouldn't say this because it's on camera, but I've been hauled over the coals recently by the BBC for some of the things I've called the Welsh Assembly government, so I'm going to be, I have honestly, it made me laugh too, I'm going to be a little bit careful about what I say, but yesterday, I had a lovely day yesterday. I was up in North Wales with a good mate of mine and we'd gone out just for a walk, and we were out there, lovely day, stunning views. I didn't see all that much. We saw a few red grouse, not a common bird now of course, and we watched the male peregrine take out a redwing, which was lovely, but not for the redwing maybe. And he turned to me and he said, do you know what, sometimes, Iolo, I wish I wasn't a conservationist. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I wish I didn't know about everything that's going on, all the bad news, all the declines and everything else. And I know exactly what he means. And it's been that kind of year, I'm afraid. Yes, there's some good news, and don't worry, we will get on to some of that now. But on the whole, it's been a year of bad news. There was a second State of Nature report. Why we needed a second one to confirm what the first one said, I'm not quite sure. We should all have been out there doing something about it. But anyway, there was a second State of Nature report. And in summary, 41 Welsh species at risk of extinction now, 60% of butterflies, 57% of plants, and 40% of birds in decline in Wales. And worryingly, fewer children getting involved with nature in Wales than any other region in the UK. That is probably even more worrying. A review of the birds of conservation concern has shown that 54 species are now on the red list in Wales. 1 in 4 of those assessed. A quarter of our species are now on the red list. And the Welsh Government, I'll choose my words carefully, the Welsh Government continues to excel. And a squadron of pigs goes past the window. We heard earlier white-fronted geese, of course. We've heard about fish-eating birds. You could add a whole list of stuff to that. The M4 Relief Road Circuit of Wales. And this week we heard that they are going to permit scallop dredging in Cardigan Bay. Who the hell votes for these idiots? I do not know. I do not know. Anyway, it's policy-wise, Wales-wide and UK-wide, and of course Europe-wide as well. It's not been a particularly good year. But perhaps the most shocking event of the year was seeing Tony Cross in a suit. Shocking, Tony. It took me a week to get over that. But if I can say heartiest, so congratulations to you and Adrienne for receiving the BTO Marsh Awards for your long-term work on Chuff. And I think a round of applause. Well done, both of you. Now, before I give you some kind of summary of what's happened with breeding birds in Wales this year, I don't know if all of you have seen this. A fascinating paper came out this week. The numbers of common guillemots on Scoma since the 1930s by Tim Burkhead. There is a copy down here. It's Steve's, I think, but it's here for you to have a look at if you want to. It is fascinating. What's happened is that Steve was over in New Zealand and dug out an old photo of the Wick, I think it is, from 1934 on Scoma, showing the number of birds. Tim then had that blown up and estimated pretty accurately the number of birds, and he reckoned there were more than 100,000 individuals on Scoma at that time. Now the current population is somewhere below 25,000, and he believes the decline, the crash, was because of the war, World War II. Of course, in the Atlantic, you had U-boats sinking, a lot of ships, a lot of oil out there, and that would have decimated the birds. And what this shows more than anything else, of course, is the value of long-term monitoring of bird populations. So if anyone here from Natural Resources Wales is listening, you've put the funding on this fantastic bit of work, please sack some of the managers and start funding monitoring again, please. So that paper is there for everyone to have a look at if you want to, and it is worth a read, it's fascinating. Right, we'll whiz through this now. Probably the most exciting news of the year was that a pair of common cranes bred in Wales for the first time in at least 400 years. Now the adult birds are part of the reintroduction scheme, the Great Crane Project on the Somerset levels across the water, of course, but obviously once they grew old enough to know what was what, they thought we're abandoning England, we're going to nest in Wales, and they successfully reared one young called Garan, Garan being the Welsh word for crane. So that is fabulous and really unexpected news. Great white egrets, well, they've gone through the roof, haven't they? This year, record number of 6 together on the Conwy just a few weeks ago, and that included a displaying pair. And surely it's only a matter of time before these birds nest in Wales. We've already got little egrets, they're already nesting elsewhere, so it's got to be next on the list. Mute swan, Tony Cross again has been doing some excellent work all over Wales. 12 breeding pairs on the Montgomery Canal produced 38 cygnets from 7 successful broods. Hoopers, a cause for concern, I think. Maximum of only 65 hoopers on the flock on the Glaslyn last winter. There's a peak of 82 in 2010, so that's down. And a maximum of only 15 at Aberhaves outside Newtown. I remember 35 plus there regularly about 20 odd years ago. So hoopers are in decline in Wales. Ospreys, good news of course, minimum of 4 pairs bred in Wales. There are unconfirmed reports of others, but 1 or 2 of the individuals claiming breeding pairs, I wouldn't really trust any further. I could throw them, to be honest with you. But the ones that we know of, on the Dovey, 3 eggs laid, 2 hatch, 1 migrated, 1 died soon after leaving the nest, which was very sad. On the Glaslyn, 3 eggs, 2 hatched, 2 successfully fledged. There's another nest not too far away from there, 3 eggs, 3 hatched, 3 fledged. And on Clywedog in mid-Wales, 3 eggs, 3 hatched, 3 fledged. From 4 pairs, 9 individuals fledged. So that's not bad going, is it? And it'll only matter of time before they're all over the shop and fishermen will be calling for a cull. You know how it works. Honey buzzards, only 1 pair present in the Neath Valley this year. And actually, we've commended Steve for his work, of course. We're desperate for keen people, preferably young and foolish, to go out and help to monitor honey buzzards. I used to do a lot more. I do hardly any now. I don't have time. I wish I did have more time, but we desperately need people on the ground helping Steve and the team to look for these birds. But just the 1 pair found in the Neath Valley, successfully rearing 2 young, and the colouring male was a 9-year-old bird born in the same valley. Now there has been a decline in the honey buzzard population throughout Wales, throughout the UK, sorry, although North Wales, again, we had nobody monitoring North and Mid Wales. So, as I say, we do need people out there. Marsh harriers, having tried but failed to breed an Anglesey last year, a pair returned to the same site this year and bred successfully. The first successful nesting in Wales since 1992. Long overdue because you go over to Norfolk and they're nesting in cornfields. So what's wrong with Wales, I do not know. Hen harriers, not much to say because I know the RSPB are giving a summary later on and it was the year of the national survey. The few that I look at, I know had a dreadful time because the rain in early June hit them very, very badly. Peregrines, much better year than last year for them. Tony again had broods of 4, a brood of 4, 3 broods of 3 and 1 brood of 2. And it's good year in Pembrokeshire on the coast, but as it is too much of Wales, I think, declining inland. I think peregrines are fast disappearing from many of our inland areas, probably because of a lack of food. Hobby, good year for this species as well, with 6 nests located in a short section of the Usk Valley, again by Steve, all of which were successful in fledging 3 chicks. So that's 18 chicks from 6 nests. That's not bad going. And the pairs were nesting less than a mile apart. So quite high densities there too. Now, we move on to Gwent levels now. Summary from Natural Resources Wales there. I'll give you water rail. Breeding pairs in 2015 was 6. This year it was 2. Chetty's warbler, last year was 52. This year 81 breeding pairs. Bearded tit, worryingly, last year 6 breeding pairs. This year just the 1, which is quite worrying, yeah. I'm breeding waders on there. Lapwing. Last year 16 pairs fledged, no young, and actually last year was a disastrous year for all of the waders over there. This year 16 pairs fledged 8 young. which is better, but it's not good enough really. I think you need something like 0.75 young per pair for a sustainable population. I don't know how they worked that out, but I think that's true. Red shank, last year 28 pairs, no young. This year 24 pairs, 24 young, so that's a lot better. Avocet, good numbers of avocet, 42 breeding pairs last year, no young. 43 breeding pairs this year, 10 young. Again, not good enough. And then ring plover, 1 pair this year, 2 young. Little ring plover, 1 pair this year, reared 2 young. So good numbers of breeding waders in Welsh terms, but not particularly successful, which is a shame. And curlew, Tony Cross has continued his excellent work on curlew. 23 nests monitored on the Shropshire-Montgomeryshire border. 3 hatched eggs, only 3, but not a single young fledged. And that exactly the same happened last year, and that's despite putting up electric fences to keep out foxes. General search of the areas where nests were not being monitored failed to find a single apparently successful breeding pair. Not one. And I wouldn't mind putting quite a bit of money on curlew becoming one of the next species to become extinct in Wales. How sad would that be? Terns, better news on terns. Our seabirds on the whole appear to be doing pretty well. Kemlin terns, estimated 2,595 pairs of sandwich terns, fledged about 1,900 young. Predation by birds and mammals again this year, mainly of juveniles. 60 pairs of common terns reared only 2 young, whereas the 60 pairs of Arctic terns failed to rear any young at all. Roseate terns were present, but no sign of breeding yet again this year. Black-headed gulls, very important part of that colony, of course, because they protect some of the terns. Black-headed gulls again had a successful season, 374 pairs rearing 400 young, and 1 breeding pair of med gull bred but failed. On the skerries, first breeding attempt by a pair of roseate terns in Wales since 2006. I remember when we had 200 pairs, but the first breeding attempt since 2006, but it was very late and the chick almost certainly didn't survive. There were 3,816 pairs of Arctic terns, that's up from last year, as did 290 breeding pairs of common terns. Unfortunately, it's really odd, the colony was hit by a virus this year that killed 477 adult terns, 5% of the total, and 355 fledglings. They are still investigating to try and identify the virus and see if they can tackle that for next year. But that's mixed news, really. Little terns up at Gronant, Wales' only colony, of course, now. A record 141 breeding pairs, fledged 170 young, highest total since 2010. And that's against a backdrop of almost complete failure in colonies all over the UK. They really didn't do well at all. But there was huge numbers of 650 adults and 163 fledged young on the Gronant beach in mid-July, and that probably a lot of the failed birds passing through. Right, Scomer and Stockholm Islands. Good news is that most of the seabirds on both of the islands are bucking the national trend with record numbers of breeding puffins and guillemots. Storm petrels, they appear to be stable at around 3,000 breeding pairs. Now the numbers of breeding herring, unless a blackback gull, continue to decline. Might be a concern for a lot of people, but what you have to remember is that after 1960 there was a massive increase in numbers on the back of fishing there. The fishing collapsed, the boats moved away, the gulls have collapsed since. So I don't think we should worry too much, particularly as I don't particularly like gulls either. Nightjar, a poor season in North Wales, although Tony, again this is, 4 nests were found and all 4 did produce young. Chicks were very slow to grow and most pairs did not go for a second brood. So again, you know, a mixed year. It's a shame they didn't go for a second brood, Tone, because the weather later on was lovely. I'm sure they'd have done really, really well. Barn owls, Montgomeryshire Barn Owl Group recorded 35 breeding attempts, which is down 36% on last year, of which 32 were successful in rearing 87 chicks at an average of 2.71 young per successful pair. So not bad. Elsewhere, very late season, and many regular pairs were missing. Brood sizes were small on the whole, but nesting success was quite good. Long-eared owl, just one record, one very late nest located near Abergavenny by Steve, had 4 eggs and fledged 2 young. Now, generally these birds lay eggs in late Feb, usually about 6 eggs. But the first egg for this pair was in early May. So that's very, very late. Dippers, Steph, this will please you, a good season for first broods. Unfortunately, second broods were abandoned in many areas, probably because of that very wet weather we had in early June. I would imagine it was awful. Black redstart is interesting. There is a traditional site some of you will know in South Wales. I've had no records from there, but one pair successfully reared young in a quarry up in North Wales this year. So that might be one that will increase. We've got plenty of quarries. Earth-shattering news for all of you. Iberian chiffchaff, those wonderful birds. What the hell's the difference between this and a chiffchaff? I do not know. Iberian chiffchaff, hold yourself, grab onto the seat. First confirmed UK record for a breeding pair on the Gower this year for Iberian chiffchaff. Now, those of you still awake, I'll move on. House sparrow, great news actually. Flock of 300, around 300 on Marlowes Peninsula in August. When was the last time we had reports of a flock of 300 house sparrows? I think that's a lovely record. Firecrest, a good year for this bird in the Abergavenny area. 2 nests found though, although several other territorial pairs were also recorded. Hawfinch, very odd bird, very elusive bird of course, but we have 2 good populations in Wales. A good season, judging by all the young birds attending the site. Of 3 nests where the young were ringed, 1 fledged 6, 1 fledged 4, and the 3rd was predated on camera by a woodpecker. It took more than 3 hours to kill and dismember the 3 large chicks. Tony took great joy in writing that down, I'm sure, Tony. Chuffs, good year for chuffs as well on the whole. Results of the National Survey show that Wales holds 214 breeding pairs, which is 55% of the UK and Isle of Man total. On Ramsey Island, 10 territorial pairs, 8 bred, 6 successfully fledged, 16 young, 1 predated by ravens. Not all the data's in yet, but probably a record number in Pembrokeshire and good breeding success as well. Of course, it's one of the strongholds for this bird in the UK. And the oldest, finally, the oldest known bird in the county now is a 22-year-old male at Castle Martin, and he's still hanging in there. Right, that's the summary. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.